Welcome to this meeting of the Audit, Risk and Assurance Committee, 17th of January 2023. It's our first meeting of the year, and we have apologies this morning from Katharina Casper, who will join us later if she can, and also from Paul Eady, who will definitely be joining us as soon as he can leave another meeting that he has an obligation to attend. So we have, as committee members, Katrina Stewart and Grant McRae, and myself, Mary Pitt-Caithley. And just to say that Grant will step in for me if for any reason the line goes down and I get thrown out of the meeting. Grant will chair the meeting until I can get back on. So thank you very much for agreeing to do that, Grant. We have a number of people with us from both the SPA and Police Scotland, also I believe from HMICS and from Audit Scotland, but also we have today for the first time representatives of BDO who will be taking on the role of internal auditors for us from April. They will only be able to attend the meeting for the public items, obviously, at this stage, but just to say welcome to them, and it's good to have them on board. Looking forward to working with them. So I don't know if you would like to introduce yourselves, BDO?
Hi, that's my camera working now. I think I'm Claire Robertson. I head up the Digital Risk and Advisory Services stream for BDO in Scotland, and I'll be leading on the internal audit service for the SPA going forward, and very much look forward to working with you all.
Thank you very much, Claire. Nice to have you here, and we hope you find the meeting interesting. And sorry that we'll have to throw you out when it comes to the private part of the meeting. Okay, thank you. Do we have any declarations of interest? I've had nothing notified in advance, but if anybody has anything, nope. Thank you very much. We have as item 1.3 the minute of the meeting that was held on the 3rd of November of 2022, which seems a long time away. That minute is there for your consideration and hopefully your approval. Does anybody have any issue with the minute?
No.
Any questions? Any matters arising that are not covered on the agenda? No, thank you very much. In which case, the action log is item 1.4, so that's the action log from our committee, and it's a rolling action log. There's one item on it, which is to do with strategic planning audit progress report, and the proposal is that we should close that item. Everybody comfortable with that? Thank you very much. Okay. We're moving on to the substantive items of business then, and the first one, item 2.1, is in relation to the internal audit update, and this is a report that's presented today by John McNellis, who's our Head of Finance Audit and Risk, and also Elizabeth Young from ASETS, our current internal auditors. So passing over to yourself, John.
Thank you, Chair. First part of the report is our normal internal audit progress update for the year. To date, we've had 5 assignments completed, which is half of our plan for the year. But there have been some delays in completion of the plan, and to try and manage a bit of that, we are looking to convene an additional ARAC in March or early April to try and just get some of those plans through before the end of the financial year. The second part of the update is our normal internal audit recommendations progress. We're seeing an overall downward trend in the number of total outstanding actions. However, there is an increase in the number of overdue actions, which is outlined in the report. And what I would also highlight to the committee is that there are 2 recommendations that Police Scotland are proposing for closure, and Police Scotland's rationale is outlined at item 2.2. However, within this particular report, ASETS outline their own thinking on these findings, where they provide a bit of information that Police Scotland are unable to demonstrate that the actions have actually taken place. So a little bit of discussion on that point. And for this action, we're actually joined by Rachel Weir, who'll be taking us through ASET's points rather than Elizabeth in this case.
Okay, thank you very much, John. It's a bit difficult because some of the information relating to this item is covered also in the next item. So I don't want to have the same conversation twice, and it may be that it's more sensible to hold and discuss the item of that specific issue of those recommendations when we come to item 2.2. Is everybody happy that we do that so that we only have the conversation once?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Before we go any further, and before I ask Rachel to come in then, I omitted to ask the committee if they were comfortable to take items 6, 7, 8 and 9 in private. So apologies for that. Everybody happy with that? Thank you very much. And I should also have noted that our Chief Executive, Lynn Brown, will not be able to join the meeting until about 10:30 this morning, but she's definitely joining us as soon as she possibly can. So back to item 2.1. And Rachel, comfortable if you want to say what you need to say about the issue that we're just discussing, or we can hold it entirely until the next item.
Thanks, Chair. I might just summarise the progress report then, and we can leave the discussion on the recommendations until 2.2, as you suggest. So paper 2.1 is our progress report, sets out the overall status of the internal audit plan. As John says, we've completed 2 reviews in this period, being the organisational learning and cybersecurity, as well as the follow-up, which we've mentioned. We have had a few delays just in terms of kickstarting some of the work. I think just availability of key staff's been a bit of an issue. But we have issued a draft report for our audit of PS compliance. We had been due to present that to this meeting of the committee. However, as I mentioned, just some delays there with getting that availability of key staff to close off the audit points, but we'll present that to the next meeting. The remainder of the audits in the plan are also scoped and ready to go with various stages of completion. The 3 that are summarised at the foot of page 1 being the staff absence, the change management of desk and the SPA forensics and physical data management. Scope and timing of those have all been agreed and is due to start in the next couple of weeks. And the final audit is the resource deployment unit, which we had a preliminary scoping meeting for just last Friday. So overall, we're on track to complete the programme of work in time for the May 23 ARAC meeting and present our annual report at that meeting also. That's as much as I plan to say, but I'm happy to take any questions on that.
Okay, thank you very much, Rachel. Is there anything else you want to add at this stage, John, before I open it up? Okay, so anybody got any questions for John or Rachel then? Grant, did you have your hand up? Sorry.
Yes, I was trying to find my electronic hand. Apologies. I think it demonstrates. Thank you, Chair. I think it demonstrates good progress, and pleased to see what is emerging. There are no obvious showstoppers coming through, and I think that's good. I think it is a wee bit concerning that some of the follow-up items are slipping in terms of getting them implemented, but hopefully they can be caught up before too long. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Grant. Yes, I think it's helpful that there are none of the very high risks open, so that's good. We're able to confirm that, and we have stopped the trend that we had of having more and more open recommendations. That's been stopped, so that's also good. But we're, I think, constantly looking at areas where the original due date is shifting and being pushed out. We need to keep a close eye on that. I think as well, one of the things that I think we need to consider is whether or not we can have a KPI relating to this whole area. I think that at the moment we don't do that in relation to the audits in our current set of KPIs, but I think when we're looking at the new contract, we could look at whether or not we should be including a KPI that helps us to track progress and monitor that. John, you have got your hand up?
Yes, Chair, more than happy to take that on with Claire and BDO.
Yeah, I think that would be really useful. So, Katrina, did you want to come in?
Thank you, Chair. I don't really have anything to add to what's been said already. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Well, thanks very much, Rachel. This is, as Grant says, an improving picture, and we, it's positive, and we look forward to future reports. So thank you very much. Item 2.2 is the Police Scotland Audit and Improvement Recommendation Tracker for Q3. And this is where we can pick up this issue of the recommendations which are recommended for closure or not. John, are you handing over, you dealing with this, or is it over to ACC Spears? Yeah.
Yes, it's to ACC Spears, and he's joined by Donna Adam.
Thank you. Morning, Alan. Morning, Donna.
Morning, Chair. Good morning, folks. Let me just maybe make one or two introductory comments around the report and the dashboard that's here. Donna's with me and has done a lot of the detail in the report, and I'll ask her just in a couple of minutes to take us through the report. So since we last reported here, a further 36 recommendations have been added, which shows us with 126 recommendations which are currently open. Around 12% of those recommendations are at a high risk. The two recommendations that John alluded to, Donna will call out. This is in the benefit realisation space, and we'll give some context and some rationale that's around there. We currently have about 24 recommendations that are delayed, and again within the report we have quite a bit of detail just around why they are where they are just now, and we'll work our way through that. So with your indulgence, Chair, I'll just hand to Donna and let her walk us through the report.
Yep, thank you very much, Alan. Yes. Morning, Donna.
Morning, everyone. So I'll just dive straight in. As Mr. Spear said, some of the highlights, we've got 126 recommendations open. We've added 36 in the last quarter, but we've successfully managed to conclude 45 of those recommendations, and approximately a quarter of those closures were relating to high risk. So it shows that we're continuing to focus on the things that are the most important in our organisation. Overall, we've got 12% of the recommendations have a high risk status, which is relatively low, and it can fluctuate anything between that 10% and 20% on occasion, depending on the sort of proportion of recommendations. We've marked 6 recommendations as pending, and this is just merely to show that we've completed all of the action that we set out to complete, but we're waiting for something to be able to demonstrate that we've implemented that piece of work, or the benefit of that can clearly be seen. So we've kind of moved them to the side, and we're just tracking with some milestones when we're going to be in a position to report those for closure once the evidence is fully available. And I've documented all of that within slide 5, so there's an explanation there what we're waiting on. So in relation to the delays, we've got 81% of the recommendations on track, which is probably lower than what we've maybe had, say, a year ago. And that perhaps reflects the current state where we're in terms of there's a lot of recommendations where there's growth required. And obviously with that comes additional finance and investment of resources, etc. In relation to the 24 that are delayed, 2 of those have a high risk status, so there's a small number of those, and 8 of those were new delays in the last quarter that you will not have seen before. So what we've been doing, and we did it the last quarter, we're starting to show you in detail what those new delays are, and all previous delays can be clearly seen within Appendix B. So if there's any questions, you should have a look at that. So in relation to those closures, I've provided a slide which just summarises a flavour of the types of things that we've concluded in the last quarter. And obviously we're not able to document all 45 recommendations, but that will get slide 3. It'll give you an indication of the types of things that I've concluded and give you some assurance that things are moving on. In relation to the 2 benefits realisation recommendations, these recommendations have been outstanding. We've held them open for the last year, but the report was published originally in October 2020, and they did originally have quite long implementation timescales, and that was due to 1, the complexity, and 2, the time that it would take in order for us to be able to demonstrate that we had addressed these recommendations. So they're linked. 1 is about putting in place a process for when we have benefits that we want to report on, and especially when they are in relation to FTE, we need to be able to show what have we done with that FTE and what performance impact has that made, and we need to be able to demonstrate it back to a performance metric. And the second recommendation is about reporting on that publicly and to our scrutiny bodies. So what have we done in relation to that? We've put in place a process The change function and our analysis and performance unit have been working collaboratively to develop a robust process that they think will be able to accurately estimate the benefits and be able to report and be confident on the performance impact that those savings are having. But we have not had any projects or programs of work that have had the number of FTE available to save that we can demonstrate that there's been a shift in a performance metric as a result of releasing that FTE. We've reviewed the process internally, both the Chief Digital Information Officer and our Director of Strategy and Analysis has reviewed the process, and they are content that it is robust enough and have presented that to DCC Taylor for approval to close. So we are proposing that we've got the process in place. There is good reporting both internally through our own management boards and also through SPA Resources Committee, so that we will be able to demonstrate our ongoing commitment to this when we have projects in the pipeline that are going to be able to release that number of FTE. I'll pause for questions, and I think maybe Andrew Henry was going to join us today, but I don't know if he's on the call. I can't see his name, but yes, I will try and answer any questions if you have them.
Thanks, Donna. That actually allows me to say that just before the meeting started, I understand that Andrew is being delayed because of other business. He will join us later, and hopefully he'll be here for item 4.1, which is the item he's leading on. If not, we may have to take a short break to allow him to get to the meeting. So he's not here at the moment, Donna, but we'll carry on, I think, with questions and discussion on these issues in his absence, I think. So if we concentrate for the moment then on the specific issue of the closure or the proposed closure of the recommendations relating to benefits realisation. Now that's covered in page 4 of the appendix to the report, and there's quite a fair bit of detail there, and you've added to that as well. But I suppose what I'm taking from what you're saying is that you're not able to bring to us a project which evidences impact of change in the way that would meet this recommendation. Now, there are many projects in the change portfolio, and some of these have been ongoing for some time. So I suppose that's in itself a bit concerning if there's just nothing that would allow you to evidence that impact. But I suppose rather than get drawn into the discussion between yourselves, it'd be helpful to know what ASEC's position is on your proposal, and then we can, as a committee, take a view on that. So, Rachel, are you able to come in at this stage?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Yeah, we've been sort of backwards and forwards on this for a while, I think it's fair to say, and working closely with Donna and the team. I think, you'll have seen that through the previous updates that we've provided in respect to these points. We've noted the progress that's been made by management, and it's not to say that there's no work that's been done. Donna's set out there, I think, really well the progress that's been made, and we're content with the direction of travel. But fundamentally, I suppose that point of not being able to evidence this new process in operation, particularly as relates to the benefits that have been realised, means that we're not content to close off these points until such time as we are able to evidence that. I think we can comment as to the effectiveness of the process that's been implemented as a proposal, but in terms of the actual operation, we're not able to give a view on that until we can see the evidence in support of that. So our stance on that really would be that it's for the committee to decide if they're happy with that response and happy for the points to be closed. Our preference would be that the actions remain on the action tracker until such times as we're able to obtain that evidence.
Thank you, Rachel. So you're not flagging up any concerns about progress in this matter, but just the concern about the lack of evidence. Is that correct?
That's correct, yeah.
And as you say, properly, it's for this committee to take a view on whether or not it's happy to close recommendations as proposed by Police Scotland, or keep them open, or do something else about moving this issue forward, rather than allow it to continue to be not a bone of contention, but an area of uncertainty, I think. So, does any member of the committee have any questions or comments on this at this stage? Grant.
Thanks, Chair. Certainly, I'm aware from the various reports and business cases that have come through Finance Committee and Resources Committee at different stages that one of the key points was to be able to demonstrate the savings and benefits that were being articulated in these business cases are actually being tracked and delivered. So I think we're all interested to see how these are actually flowing through. The way I hear it is that everybody's happy with the direction of travel, but the lack of evidence means it's very difficult to close this item. And I certainly wouldn't want to be in the situation where we end up with something in Internal Audit's annual report that suggests in a very public way that that's still outstanding. I think we would be better waiting until we can actually close this with at least one or two cases to demonstrate that it's working.
Yeah, okay, thank you, Grant. Katrina, your hand was up there for a second. Have you?
No, it was still up. It should have.
All right,
been
sorry,
up.
it disappeared again. I thought you changed your mind. Excuse me.
No, I thought, yes. I mean, as Grant was saying, this is really interesting because I quite recently asked a question about benefits realisation, specifically around FTE quite recently, and the context. So this kind of jumped out at me. My own feeling is that that assets have a job to do, and therefore, my preference would be to endorse their judgment. And if they feel that there's not enough evidence yet, then that's something that should be respected.
Okay. Yep. The ASETs are our professional advisors on these matters, so their view is very important to us. I think what we're saying is, generally, from what I can tell, there is progress, and we recognise that there is, and that there is a willingness to be able to do this and to be able to give enough evidence to close off these recommendations. But they are quite long-standing recommendations, and they're high risk. They're of interest to HMICS. They're of interest to the Policing Performance Committee as well. And I think it would be perhaps a bit rash of us to simply say, okay, we're happy to close these off at this stage with no further reference to them. Now, we could simply continue this item to the next meeting and see if more progress can be made towards providing that evidence. I'm assuming from what you said, Donna, that timescale isn't likely to be of any value. If there are no projects at the moment that will allow you to gather that evidence, then they're not suddenly going to appear between now and our next meeting in May. Now, could we have a different timescale for coming back to this issue, perhaps, that you think would give you time to do this?
So just to clarify on that,
yep.
Our approach to measuring benefits and the release of FTE is maturing, but this is about demonstrating the impact of that against a performance metric. So an example that I was given, we would need to have projects or programs of work on the same scale as CAM and mobile data that would release the significant FTE that would demonstrate a shift, confidently demonstrate a shift in a performance metric.
Yeah.
So we don't have any projects or programs of that scale in the current pipeline. So the timescale that we would be applying to this would be quite significant.
Okay, Rachel, do you have any comment on that? Because I wasn't aware that we were necessarily homing in on only those high, large scale projects, but I think I assumed that over the piece, if there was sufficient evidence from smaller projects and some larger projects, then that would give us that confidence that we're all looking for, that the benefits are being realised and we're able to track them. Rachel, did you want to come in?
Yeah, that's my understanding too. I don't think we put any stipulations that it would need to be a large project. We're happy to see it on a small scale, albeit, as Donna says rightly, the impact of that is going to be less, and that's right to make that case. But it's about that assessment back to the benefits that are set within business cases and the tracking towards that and ultimate realisation of those benefits. And the scale of the project is important, but it wouldn't be a limiting factor in whether or not we can close the action.
And I suppose if you were able to give assets what they're looking for in there, more evidence of of impact, that would be what the committee's been looking for indeed what the SPA's been looking for generally, and would, you know, we could take a view at that stage as to whether or not the recommendations had been discharged, without necessarily tying your hands in terms of what you have to give us. David, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I'll take an action, if you like, to link in with Donna the change function and as it's just to see if we can close that gap and then drop a note to the committee.
Yeah, I think that would be helpful. We'll maybe keep it as a knife, keep the recommendations as not yet discharged meantime, and we'll be able to revisit that at a future meeting. But I think that kind of discussion would be useful. David, I know you share the view that we need to be able to evidence this as well. So we're all of the same mind. We're all hoping for the same outcome in all of this, and I don't think we're necessarily a million miles from it, but it is important that we're able to recognise, we're able to point to where the impact has been evident, and we're able to show that to the Performance Committee, Resources Committee, and HMICS as well, who are very interested in this whole area. So thank you, David, that's very helpful. We'll note that that's going to be continue to be discussed, and we'll come back to committee as soon as appropriate. Okay, everybody happy with that?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you very much, David. That's helpful. Now, for the rest of your report on item 2.2, there are obviously other items where you're recommending closure, you're keeping things pending. Does any member of the committee have any question on any of these? I note, for example, that there's reference in here to business continuity, and that's certainly an issue that the Resources Committee had an interest in relation to the current situation with energy, for example. Thanks, Grant.
Thanks, Chair. Yes, indeed. And business continuity is very important, whether it be introducing, say, the electric fleet with the need to have effective recharging points and so on, to be sure that everything works properly. For any form of business continuity, it's important to be able to have a plan and test it and demonstrate from time to time that it's working as intended to reassure everybody. So keen to see that continues.
Yep. Is there anything you want to add in relation to that, Alan or Donna?
Yeah, just a couple of comments, because this is very specifically around electrical vehicles and charging points. So firstly, at this point in time, the response vehicles that we deploy on a daily basis in the local communities aren't electric. So they are used much more in community, non-priority, non-urgent types of roles. But in terms of our charging infrastructure, we have the ability not only to charge within our own estate, but to charge at any charging points across Scotland, and officers regularly will utilise opportunities to do that out with. So it's a point that we know, but I think at this point in time, there are a range of factors that leaves us in a strong place in relation to the specifics around the electric fleet.
Okay, thank you very much. Grant, do you want to come back in?
Only to say that I think the recommendation that continually testing the BCPs are working properly is very important, not just in relation to electric vehicles and recharging points, but other things that are important for the continuity of day-to-day operations.
Yeah,
thank you.
Thank you. Katrina.
Yes, thank you. It was just a comment really on the item around independent complaints handling and why that's been put back in terms of the independent review group. Fiona McQueen and myself actually attended a meeting with the independent review group. So it was just kind of really remark on that we've had a really interesting session with them. And the reason for the delay there has been that they've had difficulties with their own committee getting the right people who had the capacity and were able to commit to the work in hand. So there's some very interesting work going on there. Just a comment. Thank you.
That's really helpful. Thanks very much, Katrina. So anything else then on this report? I noticed, now I won't be able to find it, I'm sure, as I look through the report, but I noticed one of the recommendations relates to discrimination culture. And that's one that's been fairly significantly delayed. I wondered if you wanted to say something about progress with this one. tell
Sorry,
us about
Chair,
how
that's actually the item I was referring to.
Yeah, Joel, just really, yes, but in terms of how you, if you want to add something about how that's being managed meantime, I think it's helpful to know about the work that's ongoing.
Yes, I can do. So we have moved that into our pending status. When the independent complaint handling review was made, it commented on the discrimination culture and asked Police Scotland to seek to get some independent reviews of all discrimination or equality matters. So what we quickly did was we asked for the independent review group to be in place. So that almost discharges that action, but we are holding it open until the findings of that review group are available, and there has been delays with that, and it is not within Police Scotland's control because it's an independent group. The findings will be made available to the SPA, and we will act on those findings when they are known to us. So we have essentially, that's why it's impending, we have asked and invited the independent review group to review all matters. They have been significantly involved in the development of our EDI training and our strategy, our Policing Together strategy. We're holding it open just until HMICS have asked us to hold that open until we're in a position to do something with the findings.
Yeah, but in the meantime, you'll still be doing work to improve this whole area, I'm sure, with, you know, pending the receipt of that report. So I think in any of these areas where something is delayed or you know, is going to take longer than we think, then it's helpful to know what work is ongoing meantime, you know, to keep the matter moving forward. So that's helpful. Thank you. Alan, you came in, ACC Spears.
Just wanted to reinforce that point, Chair. So much of this work sits within my portfolio, and it was just to give you that assurance that notwithstanding that we are working very closely with IRG, there are multiple work strands that are running just now to progress a whole host of different work in this regard. So we're not sitting back waiting for an IRG report that would allow us to react to their findings. This probably gives us a little bit more time to make real progress in a number of areas, and we're doing that.
That's exactly the point I was trying to bring out, Alan. I think it's helpful just to, so we've got your assurance, and Katrina's also giving us positive updates from that group too. So thank you very much for that. That's helpful. Grant, you've got your hand up now.
Yes, thanks, Chair. First of all, I would like to just say to Donna how helpful I found the presentation of the report. I think the way it's laid out is very easy to follow and it's very clear. And I like the way each of the, for example, the pending ones explain the current status. So congratulations on all the work that goes on to actually improve the present style and content of presentation. I've just got one question that flows on from that. It's actually the first item on pending. It's the demand baseline product integration, which says it's that will be ready in December 22 and on track. So I just wanted to ask, has that all come to fruition, and is it when are we likely to hear any particular outcomes that arise from it?
Okay, yes, it's running slightly behind from that December timescale. We have the strategic threat risk assessment. We just need to finalise the product in order to share it with HMICS and then have it closed, which we have everything prepared, ready to go to HMICS. As soon as the final document is presented internally, we'll be able to share that, and we do expect that to be in a matter of weeks.
Right. Okay, thank you for clarifying. Thank you. That was all, Chair.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Grant. Thank you. Does anybody else have anything they want to add on item 2.2? No, in which case, thank you very much for the report and for the presentation of it. That was helpful, good discussion. Our next item is item 2.3, which is the SPA's Audit and Improvement Recommendations Update, so the equivalent report from the SPA. And John, I think you're presenting this one.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So, like you say, the flip side to the Police Scotland report, our first part of this report is our progress against the SPA Corporate Zone Business Plan. So we're pleased at this point that we have achieved approximately half of the milestones for the year, and we're expecting that 80% of our milestones are completed today or are on track for completion by the end of the financial year. The report does have detail about some of those milestones that have been delayed or rephased. At this point, we're expecting all but 2 of our milestones will be completed by the end of this financial year, with those 2 being carried forward into our plan for the following year. I did also want to highlight 2 particular points to members. The first on ill health retirement documentation. A review of this area is ongoing at the minute, and we're expecting a review to go to the legal committee in March. It's going to take a little bit more time in the new financial year to update our documentations and to actually implement the changes if there are any. And we've also committed to seeking the independent review of this process from internal audit, and you'll see that a bit later when we get to the internal audit plan that's proposed for next year. The second point to highlight is on the SPA's new website. The plans for the new website have been rephased for various reasons, which are outlined in the report. The latest update on the website is we're expecting our user testing to take place in March, and based on the results of that testing will dictate when we're able to go live, but we're expecting that to be early in the new financial year. The second part of our report is our standard progress update on all of our recommendations. A key update here is I'm really pleased to say we've been able to close 5 of our long-standing actions, and those are all related to overdue ICO actions, really following the launch of our data protection training, which happened in December, as well as the signing of the Section 83 agreement, which has now happened with Police Scotland. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much, John. Yeah, this shows good progress, but happy to have any questions or comments from members. Grant, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. John, that's a very positive report. The one area that seems to be sort of adding to your workload is the new HMICS recommendations that have been added. Do you see any difficulties in resolving them in a reasonably prompt timescale?
Yes, these are all by and large joint recommendations with Police Scotland. Our workforce governance lead has been working with equivalent within Police Scotland to try and look at those recommendations and work with HMICS on really bottoming down what we need to do. So that's a work in progress, and we're trying to feed that into our business plan for next year. Still a bit more work to do, Grant, to pin down exactly what we'll do, but we are committed to bringing the actions and our response to People Committee in due course. The normal process for HMICS is after the report has been published, we've got a period normally up to 3 months, although this one might take a little bit longer just because of the complexities of the report. Like I say, that will go back to the People Committee to agree.
Right. Thank you for clarifying. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, good progress, and it's a nice easy report to follow. Katrina, you wanted to come in. Sorry, I've just noticed your hand was up.
No, it's all right, Chair. Thank you. I was just going to say the same thing. Thank you for the report. John was very, very clear and easy to follow. Thank you.
Thanks, Katrina. Yeah, and it's good to see that although we've added 5 new recommendations, we're able to discharge 5, and particularly good to see that these relate to the ICO's recommendations. So that's good to know that there's progress there. Yeah. So, unless anybody has anything else they want to say on this, then we'll close. We've considered item 2.3 and noted the update. So thank you very much. Thank you, John. Moving on then to item 3 on the agenda. Item 3.1 is internal audit reports, this one on organisational learning. So I'm handing over to Rachel.
Yep, thank you, Chair. I'll take the paper as read. You'll see that the report is a slightly different structure and format from what we usually have. We undertook a advisory style approach to this report, and recognising that there was a lot of work ongoing already within Police Scotland through the business justification case process. And the aim of this audit really was to support work that was already underway by Police Scotland, and understanding, I think, really what the key fundamentals that were already in place around organisational learning, and also some assurances to the direction of travel that was proposed. we focused this work on a sample of business areas that are set out at page 2 of the report, and really structured around 3 main pillars of organisational learning, being the identification of organisational learning, subsequent retention, and then transfer. So overall, what we found is that there are, a whole host of different activities ongoing already within the organisation, particularly on that identification stage. So lots of good practice around sort of debriefs, lessons learned exercises, post-implementation reviews, etc. But where there was perhaps more work to be done is around how that information is then retained and disseminated across the wider business as well. So we've identified quite a few recommendations just to put some more structure around those areas in particular. Firstly, around defining what organisational learning looks like, what falls within the remit of organisational learning, how that information is going to be collated and disseminated across the wider business, particularly where the learning's been identified in an area and needs to be disseminated to other areas. Also around consistent documentation through templates, and we've also raised some points around kind of central repository, making sure that there's accessibility of those, they're easy to find what you're looking for, and also the actions that have been identified to support the transfer and retention of organisational learning are appropriately discharged to individuals and tracked through to completion. I'll pause at that point if there are any questions. As I say, I appreciate it's not our normal style of report, so I'm happy to take any questions if there are any.
Thank you, Rachel. Yeah. John, did you want to say anything in relation to this report?
Nothing specifically further to add. I think it's really interesting, actually, a different style of report. This is trying to focus on preparedness, which is one of the aspects of our excellence framework, but not one area that we do a lot of work, but really useful to get internal audit involved to look at something at an early stage and consider plans in advance. So we really welcome this report.
Yeah, I mean, I think from my point of view, this is a really good change and one that I welcome. I think it's always helpful to know, what the views are retrospectively, but to have the advice while something is still happening is particularly valuable. And I recognise it's not necessarily the way we've worked before, but it's certainly helpful to going forward. Any questions from committee members on this report? Grant.
Thanks, Chair. It's not really so much a question, it's more a comment. I also found it helpful to see this being looked at as sort of way forward approach. So given the fact that it is prospective rather than retrospective, I wondered whether there's going to be any plan to actually have a look back over a particular period to see, have these actually worked out as intended? I'm not sure when the right time for that would be, bearing in mind what's said in the text. But I mean, there's clearly a sort of agenda for action, but it's not absolutely clear to me when it would be appropriate to go have a further look in and see, is it working as intended? But I think that would be helpful at some point. Thank you.
Yep, thanks, Grant. I agree with that. Rachel, did you want to comment, or John?
No, I was just going to say that the management response that's set out at page 3 sort of spells out some of the uncertainties just around funding and how that's going to work in terms of whether there's going to be a professional services firm appointed to lead on that, or whether it's going to be dealt with in-house. I think whilst that uncertainty is ongoing, Grant, I think your point's right that there's going to be some consideration needed as to when the right time to do that. There is a commitment to undertaking action on that by 30th of September. So if you're asking my opinion, I would suggest maybe a midpoint towards that 30th of September deadline would be helpful, with a formal review at 30th of September. But clearly that won't be within ASEC's remit by that point. So yeah.
Thanks, Rachel. That's helpful.
Thank you. John?
Yes, just exactly to that point. We discussed this with Police Scotland, exactly how we do that. So because it's a prospective, we said, well, it'd be a good idea to have a checkpoint at that point sometime in September, and to input that into Police Scotland's normal monitoring report that you see.
Okay, so we could see that at the May meeting, would that be?
September. So
September.
Our meeting after that's, from memory, going to be in November.
Yeah, okay, that'd be helpful. Yeah, I mean, I suppose I don't think I've been at a committee since I joined the board where members haven't been asking about lessons learned and how we take on board the lessons from particular things that have gone well or things that may not have gone particularly well. And to be able to get that into a position where that's the norm, and people are comfortable reporting back on that quickly, I think is really important, because quite often, you know, we do find out later what the learning from something was, but may not be for some time afterwards. And to get something back more promptly, I think would be something the committees and the board would welcome. So, good morning, Lynn. Welcome to the meeting. Does anybody have anything else they want to say in relation to item 3.1 then? Nope. Okay, well, thank you very much for that. We'll certainly keep an eye on how this is going, and I look forward to the report in September. Thank you. Item 3.2 then is the internal audit annual plan. And John, did you want to say something before I hand over to Rachel?
Yes, thank you again, Chair. I'll just start with a brief overview of the planning process for the year. I think, as you know, internal audit is managed within the SPA, and it's our key third line of defence. Similar to last year, we've had a very detailed planning process to get to this point, with a similar roundtable meeting with consultation across Police Scotland, the SPA, and our external partners, so HMICS. Grant Thornton is our new external auditor, as well as AZETS. And in developing that plan, we've all looked at what are the risk areas within the organisation, our objectives, and ensuring there's coverage of all the business areas. So effectively looking at our assurance mapping. But crucially, we've had a bit of focus to ensure that there's no duplication of effort across internal audit, and in particular HMICS, which was an issue in some previous years in the past. And from that, we have developed a long list of options which have been refined down into ultimately the plan that you see in front of you today. And I would highlight to you the kind of dartboard diagram which is in the report and summarises the plan for the year ahead. What I would draw members' attention to is two particular areas. Firstly, we have the ill health retirement review and the data retention review, which is focused on the IPPD system. In both cases, these are areas of public interest and areas of concern, and we're responding to that as an authority by seeking internal audit's professional review of those areas. I'd also highlight that the internal audit plan is for all areas of policing, Police Scotland, Forensic Services, and the SPA corporate itself. An internal audit will consider all of those areas based on the subject matter. But as you would expect, they'll spend the majority of their time looking at Police Scotland. That said, we generally try to have one focus review per year on forensic services. And what we're proposing for the year ahead is a review of biometrics for forensics. But in addition to that, internal audit will consider all areas and their reviews where they're appropriate. The last point that I would just highlight is that this plan will be delivered by our new internal audit partner, BDO. And BDO to date have not been involved in the development of this plan, just based on timing of when we've done this work. So going forward, we will work with Claire and the team from BDO to make sure that the plan gives Claire, as head of internal audit, sufficient coverage that she requires to do her opinion. And there does remain still scope to flex the plan during the year. And last thing to say is that we're also keen to work with BDO going forward to develop a longer term 3 to 5 year internal audit plan. So hopefully next time we see this, there'll be a longer term outlook as well. And thank you for that. And I think we're ready to pass to Rachel and Zet.
Thank you, John. Rachel.
Thanks, John. Thanks, Chair. There's not a huge amount I would add. I would agree that it was a real good discussion that we had the roundtable session before Christmas. Good to get the input from HMICS in particular, as John says, to avoid us duplicating our planned coverage. You'll see that the plan set out in Appendix 1, it covers a wide range of areas: finance, budgeting, we've got coverage in people and development, project reviews, IT, governance. So really the summation that you see here reflects our audit needs assessment as at December of last year. It's for Claire to comment perhaps in BDO in delivering the plan, but the internal audit plan should retain a degree of flexibility. So it's not to say that this is the definitive list of what we will cover in the year. There's obviously that option to retain some flexibility over the course of the year, and clearly timetabling and logistics will be a matter for BDO to take forward. But yeah, I'm happy to take any questions as on the plan as it stands currently.
Okay, thank you very much. No, I'm sure your input to this has been really valuable, and we do look forward to discussing it with BDO and seeing if there are any proposed changes. But at the moment, we as a committee need to consider whether or not we're happy to approve this plan. Just in terms of the governance, this used to be something that had to go to the board for approval. It no longer does, so it's our responsibility to approve the plan, subject, of course, to what we've just been saying about retaining some degree of flexibility in case other matters come up as we go forward. So any questions or comments from board members? Grant.
Thanks, Chair. It's really a comment to say how helpful I found the way it was laid out and explained and what is being planned. I think it demonstrates the build-up of a lot of knowledge over a period of time and a lot of consultation that has taken place with all the different interested parties. So I think it's very, very clear, and I'm perfectly content with it. I have one or two questions in relation to when, for example, the core financial control work might actually take place, bearing in mind that the exact scope is to be agreed with the new internal auditors, but the timing of that also has to take into account our new external auditors and the sort of reliance that they're expecting to place on particular areas of internal audit activity. So it would be helpful to understand that, but I appreciate that Claire may not yet be in a position to answer that. But we'll come to that in due course. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Grant. John, did you want to cover that?
Yes, of course. Just to briefly outline that, once we're going through the induction process with BDO, and once we're at a stage, we'll start to plan, working with Police Scotland, when roughly we can timetable all of that work. What we are quite keen to do is to order some of the internal audits, so to give them a view. Sorry, I'm explaining myself. To look at core financial controls and areas such as IT, which will give them a good introduction to the service before moving on to some more detailed work, so that there is a nice, I think, a natural flow to some of the internal audits that will let them build up their understanding of the service, and that will be quite, difficult work and a steep learning curve to really understand Police Scotland and the authority and how we work. So we almost set the internal audit plan with an eye to areas that would be quite good to give you that introduction. And I think doing an overview of core financial controls early in the year would be quite useful for BDO to start to understand how the service operates.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, that sounds sensible to me as
yeah.
well. So that's good. Thank you.
Yes,
Thanks,
indeed.
Grant. Can I ask if we've had an eye to the other areas of scrutiny that we can expect to be having to deal with over the next year or so as well? So, for example, HMICS, are we content that we're not looking at areas of overlap here, but that we've got something which is going to give us coverage from both of those perspectives? John?
Yes, so as part of the planning process, like I say, we met with HMICS, and at that point they were just revising their scrutiny plan. So we've got a slide for that, and we've made sure that there is no overlap. You'll also see within the report we have our assurance matrix, our assurance mapping framework, which shows the areas of reviews that HMICS are undertaking over the year, as well as what we're asking internal audit to look at, so that there aren't areas of overlap. And actually, just as a matter of course, we have quarterly meetings between the authority, internal audit, and HMICS, where we just talk about the work that both areas are doing, just to make sure there's no overlap, and actually talk about areas that are complementary findings, and where HMICS have been quite useful in the past, are suggesting areas that might be useful for internal audit to look at. So we've got that regular liaison to make sure that we're not falling over each other, we're not wasting effort in our scrutiny, and getting the most out of each other.
That's great. Thank you very much. Yeah, and I think it's important to recognise that this is BDO's first year on this. So, there will, as you say, be areas where it would be helpful for them to get that opportunity to get to know us before they get involved in some aspects of work. Okay, and the other point that you mentioned, John, was that we would be looking to work with them on a longer time frame, so maybe a 3 or 5 year plan. Do you want to say a wee bit more about that?
Yes, of course. We need to agree this with BDO, but what we would typically expect is to look at a longer term horizon and look at where we would schedule audits over 3-4 years. So if we were to look at financial controls, we would want to order and look at a particular area of focus over 5 years, so that we're considering, you know, all of our key risks over that horizon. So for example, earlier on where we're talking about performance framework and performance management, the last review of that was 2010. So it may be that in the cycle of audits that there's time again to look back at that. Again, I would suggest that as part of our planning for the following year coming, we also look at the same time to our 3-year horizon, as well as the next internal audit year at the same time. And that I would suggest would give BDO a little bit of time to really build up their knowledge of the service.
Okay, thank you. Anybody got anything else they want to add in relation to this item? In which case, are we content to approve this plan? Yes?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. The plan is approved, and we look forward to receiving regular reports on progress. So thank you very much for that. Now, we're slightly ahead of ourselves in terms of our running order for this meeting. And as I mentioned, Andrew Hendry isn't able to join us. We're trying to find out at the moment just, you know, how long it will be before he can be here. His is the item 4.1, which is our next item on the agenda on the Police Scotland Change Portfolio update. We'll come back to you as soon as we know how long it's likely to be before Andrew joins us, and we might have to consider taking a short break, for example. But I propose that we skip item 4.1 meantime and move to item 4.2, which is an update from Police Scotland on best value. And I think it's Andrew Corfield who's presenting this, if you're there, Andrew.
Alistair Corfield,
yeah,
but
Alistair, sorry.
I'm called many things, but that's absolutely fine.
I'm rechristening you, Alistair. Apologies for that.
Not a problem. No, that's fine. Yeah, I don't propose to go through the entire paper, but you know, very happy obviously to take comments. But there's just a few things, a few highlights I was going to refer to before we get started. So, you know, first of all, and probably most importantly, this is about the Chief Constable's strategic duty and how we support him in evidencing his discharging of that duty. We have commenced a pilot already in the area of procurement. So we're deploying Audit Scotland procurement toolkit in that area, and they're working on that at the moment. I'm expecting to get feedback from them this week, and we will looking to conclude that bit of work by the end of the financial year. What we'll do is then evaluate that and develop plans for taking that work forward and deploying the remainder of the toolkits. So there's 18 toolkits in total. Those toolkits all feed up to 7 themes, 7 best value themes. So it's important that we plan our approach with that in mind. And we'll also use the feedback. I mean, there's the slide at the end of the presentation there that talks about what value we'll get from the pilot. But you know, we'll also use that to establish the resource requirement, etc. And that's all very important before we actually get started in earnest. As I've mentioned, you know, we are taking a self-assessment approach to this and using Audit Scotland toolkits. That's felt as a good baseline, but it is important that we refer to the themes and use those toolkits to confirm our adherence to those themes. The 18 toolkits, though, are expected to take around about 3 years. It might be a little bit less than that, but at the moment, that's our planning assumption. But again, once we've had this pilot out of the way, we'll have a bit of a better feel for what that might look like. Although clearly, you know, the toolkits are so varied that actually doing one toolkit in procurement may not give us real insights to toolkits in, for example, community engagement, for example, or leadership, which are quite different. Just another couple of points. You know, it's very critical that we'll be developing an upskilling strategy as well to go alongside this. So it's not just about self-assessment using the toolkits, but very much about enabling the organisation to fulfil a best value remit. And that upskilling will range, as you'd expect, I'm sure, would range from induction right up to senior leadership engagement as well. And finally, I was just going to touch on governance. So the best value function will report to the Senior Leadership Board in Police Scotland, and that is chaired by the Chief Constable, and that will obviously support him in discharging his statutory responsibilities, as I referred to at the beginning. So that was all I was going to say, Chair, but very happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Alistair. That's helpful. Open it up to questions. Grant. Thanks, Chair. Alistair, I think you've laid it out very clearly, and it's obviously very sensible to use the Audit Scotland toolkits. I wonder if you could say a little bit more about the team, you and the team, whoever they may be, who will actually be carrying out this work, because I don't underestimate how much time and effort is required to actually get into each of these territories. For example, areas like continuous improvement is something that interacts with all sorts of other parts of Police Scotland and forensics. For example, there's all sorts of interactions that will take place. So I wonder if you could say a little bit more about the team, and also, since we have not just had Audit Scotland carrying out our external audit, we now have Grant Thornton carrying out our external audit. I mean, could you say a little bit about how you're interacting with them, because they're going to have to form a view on progress on best value? Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Grant. So first of all, on the team, at the moment, so we are in the process of standing this up. So at the moment, there's just me. There is nobody else.
There's no I in team, as they say.
Yeah. I mean, I'm in sort of transitioning into the role at the moment. So it's really something that's been supported while I've been doing my old function. So yeah, I mean, the idea is really to use the pilot to give us some kind of indication as to the sort of level of resource required and the skills. I mean, I think given my background, it's probably not surprising that you would expect some, I would probably want some of the team members to have kind of an audit background, I think, because I think one of the key things will be reviewing the feedback from the self-assessments and developing the evidence, looking at and testing the evidence. I think the audit background would be quite important in that. But I think importantly, and you referred to it, Grant, in terms of continuous improvement and other things, I think there's probably a place for a kind of virtual team as well that sits across a number of the functions in Police Scotland. And you'll see in the presentation that we've already engaged with a number of colleagues from governance, audit and assurance, continuous improvement, strategy and analysis, etc. So that's with a view to possibly borrowing their expertise to support the best value function going forward, but not probably on a permanent basis, but just to sort of work with them and perhaps have people on secondments to be determined, I think is probably the answer on that. Your second point was about Grant Thornton and BDO. So I'm engaging with both of them. So I have already spoken to Joe Brown from Grant Thornton, and I've got a call scheduled with Claire from BDO towards the end of this month to take their views on these things. I have to say that a meeting I had with Joe Brown from Grant Thornton was very much in line with the approach that we're taking. But because it's in its infancy, I find every single, this is not a glib throwaway comment, I find every conversation I have on it to be extremely valuable, and it really does give me food for thought and help me to develop the approach that we're taking to this. So the discussion with Grant Thornton was useful just in firming up some of the things we've already determined, but also in giving me perhaps a slightly different idea on some of the approaches that we might take as well. So it's very important, I think, just to engage with those people as well, without obviously compromising their responsibility to hold us to account ultimately on it.
Thanks, Alistair. That's very helpful. And as I think you probably know, both Mary and I have had experience of seeing best value evolve over many, many years. I think you should also, I'm sure, be able to tap into Audit Scotland's information and advice as and when
Sure.
required as you carry out the pilots. So I would just say good luck and look forward to hearing how it all unfolds.
Yeah, thank you, Grant. Just before just to finish off on that one, I think, you know, Audit Scotland's experience, and it's not just Audit Scotland, clearly HMICS are involved in this space as well, but Audit Scotland have probably got the greatest experience, and they've obviously focused on local authorities until now, and moving into the sort of central government, the Scottish government space is, I think, relatively new territory, and I think it's, you know, it remains unclear exactly on how that approach will work, but clearly we can take a lot of guidance from the way that they've done it in the local authorities to date.
Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah. Thank you very much, Grant. Thanks, Alistair. Katrina, you've got your hand up as well.
Thank you. Yes, I found this piece very, very interesting indeed, and I'm just curious, really, to know. You've got, I mean, because there's so many themes listed here. It's really interesting range of themes involved, and I suppose I'm just curious to know what led to the decision to do the pilot around, you know, some thematic review around procurement.
Yep, a perfectly reasonable question, Katrina. Thank you for that. You know, we looked at whether we should do it in an area where, you know, we really tested ourselves in an area where we knew that we were there was significant work to do, and we felt that in terms of doing a pilot, it was probably better to do it in an area that was relatively tightly defined, and where there's already been quite a bit of work done in terms of stepping back from it and taking a strategic approach. Mainly because it'll be quicker for one thing, but will give us probably more information in terms of informing the best value approach. We might not get the value out of it. Sorry to use this value term again. We might not get the value out of doing that work in terms of informing how procurement move forward, but the idea was really to more inform the best value function, and that's why we chose an area, as I say, it's quite tightly defined. It's already had a good look at it, so we would expect the outcome to be relatively positive, but hopefully there is still some areas of learning in there, and something that can be some value that can be derived from undertaking the pilot in that area.
That's really, really interesting. Very, very helpful. Thank you. That makes sense completely.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Katrina. I also thought it was a sensible solution or decision to start with procurement. Clever decision, and hopefully we'll get you off to a good start as well. Because I think it is really important with something as significant as this that people buy into it and support yourself, Alistair, but also you know, support the organisation to do the work. There's a lot of work involved, and you know, it's in some ways a new way of working. So it's helpful if people buy into it, and starting with something like procurement should get you off to a good start, I think.
Thank you. Thanks.
The other comment I had was in relation to the buy-in from the Force Executive and the Chief Constable in particular, because clearly that's really important for something like this. It is the Chief Constable's responsibility, and you know, he's obviously putting his trust in you, Alistair, to do the work on this on his behalf. But can you assure us or reassure us that that buy-in from the Force Executive is there and is going to be able to give you the support you need?
Yeah, I mean, I think David's just cropped up there, so I'm sure he'd like to respond. But I think it's probably important. I'll just very briefly touch on one aspect. Very important to say that, you know, this function will report through Police Scotland's Audit and Risk Board into the Senior Leadership Board, which is clearly the most significant or senior board in Police Scotland that the Chief Constable himself chairs. So that will be not only an opportunity for him to take first-hand ownership of this, but also for the executive to see the importance that he places on it. So I'll probably best if I hand over to David now, if that's okay, Chair.
Thank you, Alistair. David.
Thanks, Chair. Another aspect of what we've done here is Alistair stays under James for pay and rations, but in respect of his best value role, he's a direct report to me. And the reason that we've done that is that best value isn't just about finance. There's so many different aspects to best value. And one of the things that we didn't want to happen is the Force exec felt that best value was some sort of finance initiative when it has a much broader impact than that. So hence it's coming into me because I have obviously a much broader remit than just finance. So that's one of the aspects. As Alice has already said, it's reporting to ARAC, well, our version of ARAC internally, which I co-chair with DCC Taylor, and obviously will then report into the SLB. And also, I've had conversations with the Chief Constable about the creation of this role. Police Scotland's never had a best value role. We've always had best value responsibilities, and the Chief Constable's always had a best value statutory responsibility under the Act. But this is the first time we've actually put a senior player in place who understands best value at the level that Alistair does, and he really does understand it. So we've not only appointed someone, but there's a framework around him to ensure that it has the attention that it needs, and the Chief Constable has been supportive in establishing that. So hopefully, again, that provides a little bit of reassurance. Thanks, Chair.
Yes, thank you, David. And I note from the report that ACCs and directors have all been designated as best value responsible officers. And I think that also sends a message through the organisation about the importance being attached to this. So I think that's a very useful step to have taken. The proposal, I think, is that information about progress that you're able to make will be brought to ARAC twice a year. Is that correct?
That's right. That's our proposal at this point in time. Yeah, just to keep ARAC updated on progress. Absolutely. Yeah.
So we might hear from you again during this calendar year.
I would think so.
Twice a year
I'd hope
thereafter.
so. Yeah.
Okay, that'd be good. Well, I mean, we wish you well. If there's anything we can do to support this, some of us, Lynn, for example, and I have been through this, as Grant says, since the early days. So we've seen various incarnations of best value, but it's still, I mean, it's still very, very familiar territory. And I think if, wish you well. Can I ask, maybe it's for David to answer, but if the resources simply aren't there as we go forward to provide the level of support that currently you would want to do, want to be able to give Alistair, what would be your plan B in that respect? How would we still be able to provide sufficient resource to be able to keep this, moving forward?
It's a really good question. It's a question that Alistair, myself and James discussed when we were discussing this a week or two ago. Having Alistair as a kind of one-person band on this gives us a point of focus, which is good. We've laid out a plan. One of the key things is that the individual areas have a best value responsibility themselves. So there's a little bit of the organisation understanding that managing of itself. We've put part of one of the components of the pilot is what we've said is that part of the role that Alice is going to be doing is looking at what's actually needed in terms of support. And what we're looking for is like training and induction. So when people come in and join the organisation, there should be a very clear component of their induction process or their training process that talks to the responsibility of best value for every individual. So at the moment, it's a toe in the water to see if the approach being taken, which is everyone has a best value responsibility. We apply best value across every procurement decision. There's always an internal question of, but are we getting value for money on this? So we've been doing that anyway, but applying a specific best value kind of almost like audit lens to the conversation helps. Having Alistair providing focus to it, looking at maybe how do we put a marker down in the early stages of people's onboarding? We have Moodle training once a year on a variety of different things like internal security, cyber, bits and pieces like that. So looking at things like, do we introduce a best value Moodle thing that everyone in the organisation has to do. So we'll look at options like that to see if we get the right level of impact. If we don't, then we'll need to think about, do we need to provide him some additional information, resource. One of the things that we have to be mindful of, though, is the budget settlement for 23-24 is a lot less than we need, which is putting pressure on both police officer numbers and staff recruitment. So we are focusing very much on operational roles in the staffing side, or redirecting other roles in that side. So we'll have to be very, very careful about what we do and how we do it. So we'll run with what we've got at the moment in terms of Alistair, own people's responsibility, building in training awareness, specifically on best value. See how that works. If it does work, tick. If it doesn't work, then we'll revisit it, but we'll have to revisit it in the context of perhaps giving finance partners some sort of responsibility in terms of best value. I don't want to prejudge the outcome of the pilot stage, but we are conscious of the fact that he is one individual with a very big plan. But the important thing to note is best value is responsibility of everyone. And we've been in an okay place on best value over the last 6 years. We've been getting better and better and better. This is just another layer on top of it. So this isn't our first step into the best value arena. This is very much a, can we get better at it? And we'll explore what happens over the next 6 months or so, and then take lessons from that, come back to the board, discuss it with Lynn, and take a view on it at that point. So hopefully that gives you a little bit more context about how we're handling it.
Yeah, thank you very much, David. That is useful. And, you know, I think it's important that we cut our cloth, but that we are still able to support the Chief Constable to discharge his statutory responsibility. And as you say, not just in finance terms, but in terms of sustainability, equality, people, all the other elements of best value. Okay, thank you very much for that. Does anybody have anything else they want to say on item 4.2? No, thank you very much then, and thank you for the report. And good luck, Alistair.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the offer of help as well. Thank you.
Absolutely, absolutely. And timing, Andrew, is impeccable. You've arrived just on time. We'll go back from item 4.2 to 4.1, which is your report on the change portfolio update. So welcome to the meeting, Andrew, and I'm going to hand over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks, members, and thanks again for accommodating the other meetings that were in play at the same time. So the report's been provided to members. Again, I'll just highlight the reporting period is out of sync slightly. So the information here is obviously from our last change board, which was the end of November. I have added some updates where we are able to in regards to key projects and programmes, but generally the data set is from the November change board. The pack obviously is outlined there. I won't go through it line by line, but I will just draw out some highlights for members. Firstly, just to say that we are currently looking at our portfolio for the coming financial year, and with that comes a range of new products which will be surfaced through various committees, including ARAC. Members will have seen some of these already featuring at change board regards to end project reports, etc. So we will also have a roadmap view defined for the new portfolio as well, which again will map to a similar theme. So just to reassure members that as outlined in the introduction, the kind of wider change piece will start to feature as part of the roadmap, beyond just formal projects of change. Diving into the report, so firstly in regards to key activity, so the portfolio review for 22-23 was completed and agreed, and I know we had a session with various members of the SPA on that, and that allowed us to kind of reprioritise the remainder of the financial year. That was mainly down to resourcing constraints in regards to delivery, which has been well surfaced previously. So that allowed us to essentially concentrate our resource on our delivery for the remainder of the financial year. So that stands. That prioritisation work then fed into the planning work for next financial year, which obviously we're coming to the start of relatively soon. That work's ongoing, and again, that will be surfaced through the various governance boards in due course, but that will see us moving our portfolio into the next financial year. Again, it probably stands that you know, given the complexity and kind of multi-year nature of our portfolio, that prioritisation exercise was relatively simple to do. In actual fact, due to funding constraints, it will actually be about how we can fit the existing portfolio into the new funding envelope, and that's something that's being worked on just now. And as I said, that will be put through to the various boards in due course. There were 6 projects coming to the end of their delivery phase, and the kind of end projects end project reports are detailed there. So again, we'll be working phase 2 particularly, and the purchase to pay ones, and again, they've been surfaced through the various committees with members. In regards to delivery, again, just to highlight some pieces here, so cyber resilience solution received approval to go live in the 22nd of November. This seen a major milestone being reached within our cyber security space, and again, there was private briefings carried out on that at the time. In regards to some of our larger programmes, so CAUS, which is our Core Operations Solutions programme, the phase 2 of that obviously progresses on. C Division was implemented on the 16th of November successfully. It's seen, you know, a very vast amount of data migration activity required for that. And again, just to restate that these implementations aren't rinse and repeat. Each division has got its own challenges, its own legacy systems, and its own data challenges. So very much kind of bespoke activity each time. Work's ongoing now for the next implementation, which will see us into P Division in February, and then on to E&J on the 19th of April, currently as planned. The last piece to highlight from there is Insight. So again, members will have had demos of that in the past, I believe. Well, that's our search tool, which allows our officers to have the required data at their fingertips when out and about, both mobile but also within their desktop environments. And again, that also went live in this reporting period. There's touched on in regards to engagement. So again, I thought it was worth highlighting that. So we've got a kind of major program of engagement across the organisation. Given the size and scale of change that's taking place across the organisation at a national level, there is a level of engagement that goes hand in hand with that, and we've certainly invested a lot of time in that in regards to both on the ground project updates, but also more generally around change activity within the organisation. So again, I won't go through it line by line, but you can see a number of programmes and projects there that are featured, and there's also an appendix which gives some on the ground insight into how those events went. We've got a calendar of events planned for the coming financial year again to try and get out into more divisions more regularly, and also start to bring more and more projects out there. You know, for example, we recently had our DEP and our fleet teams out in division, allowing officers and staff to actually put their hands on proposed equipment, technology, vehicles, etc. And not only do they get better insight of what's coming, but the projects also get insight and also allow them to make the solutions ultimately better for the ones that are going to be using it. In regards to the main report, again, I won't read through it obviously, but just to call out some highlights. Police and Digital World Programme continues to progress. Obviously, we do have some resource constraints in there, which are impacting the ability to progress the forecasted spend, but this is being met with support from our colleagues across the organisation. NLEDS is one to pull out. So NLEDS is the replacement of our PNC solution, and again, that's a national Home Office programme. We have a deadline of next year to have this complete by when the old solution's retired. So that is now being put into formal governance, and that's being stood as a programme. That will see us moving from what's a very antiquated system, which I would probably surface it's very like teletext in regards to its operation. It's for those who remember that, into a more cloud-based, easy to use solution that actually works on mobile, etc. Digital evidence sharing capability desk. So again, members will be aware that our joint working with partners in the CJ to implement digital evidence sharing. That's reaching the point for pilot decision, which is next week. If all's achieved, that again, it's on plan for that, and that was the meeting I was on before I joined this one. So that could see us piloting the desk capability within the Dundee region for 6 months, which will allow us to I suppose assess that way of working and also look to scope it for further rollout. Digital policing programme. So again, I've touched on the cause piece around that. We also now have body worn video national featuring in there currently in IBC stage. That's now progressing through to FBC, which will see us having a national body worn video solution across our staff and officer base. Again, there's a lot of work in there, given the size of that activity, but also the complexity and overhead. And again, there's a number of briefings being planned for SPA members around that. Lastly, I would just touch on the external assurance. So again, there's a number of assurance activities currently in flight, both complete and also planned, particularly within DESC. So DESC had a TAF review recently, which came out with Amber. This allowed us to, this provided us with 8 recommendations, which have now been built into the project team. And there's also National X Project TAF also being scheduled for February, and that again is in line with the Rolling Contact Engagement Programme. Chair, I'm happy to leave it there and happy to take part in any discussions.
Thank you very much. Just before I open it up for questions, Andrew, what I think would be very valuable for the committee would be to have an overall summary of the change portfolio. This tells us quite a lot about individual projects, but we don't have, I think, the same as we had the last time, a kind of overall summary of how the change portfolio is performing, the overall assessment of progress or otherwise. And I think that'd be helpful if you could ensure that comes to us at the next meeting. That would be useful. Okay, thank you.
Thank you,
Katrina, you're looking to ask a question, make a comment.
Thank you. Yes. Thanks, Andrew. Very interesting. My question is really around time scales. And the resource situation, the funding situation, absolutely understood. But in that context, so for example, the DESC pilot, you're talking about piloting DESC in the Dundee area for 6 months. And then at the end of that, presumably you're going to, or during that 6 months, you will be evaluating how well that pilot is doing. And then that needs to possibly be adjusted, and then it needs to be rolled out across the whole of Scotland. And so my question really is, that seems to me to be quite a long-term time issue. So just wondered if you could talk a wee bit more about the risks around that. And also the body worn video would be the same. I mean, so much depends on DESC for a start, that if it doesn't kind of get moving, then other things are going to be delayed as well. So I just wonder if you could talk a wee bit about that. Thank you.
Thank you, Katrina. Yeah, so it's a really good question. So I think from a DESC perspective, not only are we testing the technology through the pilot, but also the ways of working. Again, across the partnership, we're very key to make sure that a kind of minimum viable product was developed to pilot. Given the nature of digital evidence and the way it passes over all the partners, much of the work was really around design and around actually making sure that each organisation is able to work in a digital way. The point you make is very valid about the scale up. It will be very I suppose complex, but also all encompassing in regards to the whole digital evidence space. What I would say though is that managing digital evidence, generally speaking, a video file is a video file. So once we can manage one video file, we can potentially manage any video file. The trick will be in design of the actual services. So as we go into other divisions, again, subject to successful rollout of the pilot, it will be about how we actually map that way of working and capability to the operating models of each division and also each part of the partners, equivalent of divisions. So certainly from a programming project perspective, we have roadmaps being developed that essentially will take us from that initial delivery 1 phase, which has been classed as pilot, into another 2 delivery drops, which again are subject to design and board approval, but that will essentially see us getting to the point of having an established digital platform across all the partners in all the regions over a period of time. But it's certainly phased and it's certainly very, very risk aware in regards to how those media items are actually managed, but also more importantly, how the organisation's workflows adapt to support that. Right now, I mean, to be frank, most organisations in this space are actually turning digital evidence into analogue. because that's how we can, actually manage it. So we're taking digital pictures and printing them, for example. So the actual, I suppose, bones of digital evidence already exists. It's how we actually handle it that's currently being considered as part of the DESK programme. But I can reassure you that from a programme perspective, there's a strong roadmap and strong partnership across all the partners there to not only monitor the pilot phase, but then learn from that in regards to any future iterations and implementations. And it is over a phased period.
Katrina, are you happy with that? Oh, sorry, you're mute, Katrina.
Oh, sorry, my computer was playing
Yeah.
games with me. Yeah, well, I suppose yeah, I mean, thanks for your response, Andrew. I mean, you are talking about over periods of time. I think what I would be really interested to know is what those periods of time are looking like. Not necessarily, I'm not expecting an answer to that necessarily right now, but it would be good to get a sense of what kind of timeframes we're looking at. And also, again, how the whole evaluation thing, if you've actually got a kind of timetable of how you're going to evaluate, when you're going to evaluate some of this. So that would be really helpful. Thank you.
Thanks, Katrina. Just to follow on from that question, I suppose the last time we looked at the DESK project at our last meeting, we were given information about a number of significant risks that were having to be managed by the partnership as the DESK moves forward. And the 24th of January is very close to us now. It's next week. So can you tell me something about, the degree of comfort we can take from how those risks are currently being managed? So we had reputational risks, with legal risks, data protection risks, financial risks, all sorts of areas of concern. So
yeah, certainly, Chair. So the bulk of the risks identified within DESK were either kind of BAU manageable ones or ones that were essentially to a breaking new ground. The partnerships came together over the last, particularly the last 6 months as we've moved into a space of actually having the product in test to mitigate all these risks, from things like, cloud storage, etc., right the way through to, like, I suppose, legislative changes from analog to digital. They're all being managed through the partnership, and certainly, again, just having left the board there, we're currently in a kind of mostly green to amber phase there. And again, both SPA and all partners are obviously featured within those conversations. There is some ongoing risk which we just can't remove, and it's about mitigation. We had a meeting yesterday with our CSIROs, and again, most of those mitigations were accepted with some small caveats. So I think in regards to the pilot phase, we are at a ready with caveats phase, which I would, to be honest, we naturally expect given the pilot phase of it. Certainly, we would not be progressing to a full-blown final solution, across all partnerships until such time as those risks were either mitigated further or equally removed. I would say, though, given the nature of the technology, we probably will never remove all risk, as you'd expect with life. But generally speaking, compared to where we were, we are massively moved forward, which again is mainly down to timing as well. Much of these risks were around items that were planned for further into the pilot design phase, which have now been passed. So generally speaking, I would say that we are in a very good space for pilot next week. But the decision for that's happening today.
So the partnership is content that there are sufficient mitigations in place to allow the pilot to proceed next week. But and we did get a lot of reassurance from Damien Armstrong when he came along to our last meeting. But from your point of view, since you're here today giving us the update, you're saying that there's been sufficient additional progress made for the pilot to go ahead with the mitigations that are still under discussion.
Yeah, it's certainly expected that a go live will be agreed today. We're waiting one outstanding item from COPFS, which is due in before 12 o'clock.
Okay, well, we'll hopefully let you get back to that meeting quite quickly then, Andrew. But Grant, you've got some questions?
Yes, thanks, Chair. Andrew, thank you very much. That was a very helpful account of all the different things that are going on. And every time we hear from you, it's very clear that you've got a huge agenda of different things that to keep all the balls in the air, all these different balls in the air is no small task. The area I was going to ask you about was NLEDs, if I pronounced that correctly. Clearly that interacts with the Home Office and the rest of the UK. is that sort of going to absorb a huge amount of time and effort that takes you away from some of the many other tasks, or have you got enough in the team that can keep all these balls in the air at the same time?
Thanks, Grant. I mean, I am just a spokesperson for the change portfolio. You know, there's a vast array of people in the organisation leading the change. It's actually been delivered. Me and my team essentially provide professional support around that. I certainly look to try and provide positive challenge and try and provide a bridge between all the change activity. And I think, to some of the points that was raised earlier, we are currently kind of out of cycle for reporting here. So apologies that the reporting was a wee bit more kind of bespoke. Certainly, we're planning to be here, I think, in March with a look back into the portfolio and also a look forward into next year's portfolio. And I think that would give members that real roadmap view. And I said that's kind of what I touched on at the start in regards to the, we have got new products developing, and I know Grant yourself within resources, for example, has seen some of these in regards to end project reports and benefits reports, etc. But no, certainly, I mean, our real challenge currently is in resourcing, predominantly because a lot of our programs are almost like a Russian doll type setup where we've got a massive program with a number of deliverables inside it, and it's very sensitive to resourcing changes, and that's what's being managed day to day by both the program and project managers, but also the SROs.
Right, thanks, Andrew. I think we don't underestimate the challenge of keeping all these projects running, and I suppose it's in some appropriate time to see some sort of visual portrayal of how they're progressing, sort of using RAG, for example, would help us to understand at a glance just exactly which ones are running in the way at the speed you'd like them to, or which ones are sort of ahead or running behind. But that's the timing of that's really up to you.
Yeah, so I think the change board products obviously make their way through to the SBA through the change engagement team, and as I said, we are due to present here in March, both a look back and a look forward. So that'll be very much a roadmap view as you outlined, but certainly the kind of RAG type strategy that you references, as part of the standard change board pack. So I'm sure that the SBA change engagement team surface that or should be surfacing that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, David.
Thanks, Chair. To Grant's point about can we provide an overall picture of all the programs and B, a RAG status? Yes, we can. What I'd suggest that we do that in a private session, because obviously it runs to our capability, and I wouldn't want that being aired in public, to be quite frank.
Yeah. Perfectly comfortable with that. Yeah,
absolutely.
Thank you.
Thanks, David. Before we let you get away then, Andrew, could I just ask one point about one of the projects, which is in relation to body-worn video? We're obviously all very anxious to see this introduced as quickly as possible, and I do recognise that the big unknown at this stage is the funding for it, so that's obviously critical. But can you tell us about progress on this one, because there are clear interdependencies also with DESC, aren't there?
No, certainly. I mean, with my SRO hat on, I'm kind of working on this daily now. So with the team, so as you're aware, we implemented recently body-worn video for armed ahead of COP26. And I won't rehearse it, but we are one of the few forces that don't have it currently. Yeah. Body-worn video for armed was actually a relatively simple implementation on the basis of the kind of size and scale of it. Body-worn video national is a completely different challenge, as you outlined, Chair, both in terms of pure procurement perspectives in regards to getting that volume of technology into the organisation, but also regards to dependencies and synergies. As an example, there's been some estimates done recently, as part of the planning work that body-worn video footage for 4 or 5 cameras, in actual fact, is represents more network traffic than an entire average police station. So with that in mind, the infrastructure to support this is actually really key. And that's part of the full business case process that's now being developed. Currently, the team are moving into that FBC process, and that's looking at both the actual design and procurement of the actual camera solution. But we're also now starting to expand out into the use case, some of the storage constraints around that, and also the kind of day-to-day activity. There's questions in there, for example, around personal issue versus pool issue. There's questions around actually how that forms part of the working process of picking up equipment, etc. And then there's obviously how that links into how that media then forms part of our day-to-day information and data. And as you outlined, DESC will be key to that, to managing that Essentially without desk, we would have to implement a version of desk just for body on video to actually manage the cameras once they're live. So, it is very critical on desk or on a similar desk type solution. The team are currently working on that SBC. The timelines are around 27 months, I think, I believe, and the bulk of that is around both preparatory work but also design work. As I said, much of that infrastructure work across the country as well, is obviously part of that. You touched on the funding. Not only is the funding for body-worn video essential in regards to the purchasing of the equipment, but also the ongoing run cost.
Yeah.
We are talking about a new cost. Now, obviously, there'll be benefits in there which we will look to extract and look to realise. But there is a realisation around this technology that it won't necessarily always pay for itself. And I think that's something within the business case that we'll be very careful around defining. We don't want to rule out benefits, so we'll make sure we capture them all. But at the same time, there will be a situation around this is a key bit of kit that that most, if not all, police forces use. Certainly ones of our size and scale, and that kind of additional run cost for the force is going to be a challenge, which also will have to be debated once we surface the full business case.
Thanks, Andrew. And you unfortunately had to miss the discussion we had earlier about benefits realisation and the need to be able to evidence the benefits that are achieved from projects such as this. So I think it really is critically important that that's an element of the work that is given urgent attention. So that's helpful. And I suppose there's only one advantage to being the only force that doesn't have this, which is that we can take the learning that other forces have had from it, and we can look at where it's working well and where there might be lessons for us. So I'm sure that's part of what you're doing as well. But we certainly look forward to reports as quickly as possible on, how this is moving forward. So wish you luck with that one as well. Does anybody have any other comments or questions on item 4.1? No. Thank you very much, and thanks for coming out of your meeting, Andrew. Let you get back there. And wish you well with the project board. Okay, thank you. Item 5 is our last item in public, and that is the committee's work plan for the rest of the year. It's there for our consideration. It's obviously a live document with continually being refreshed. I think from my point of view, when you look at what was being proposed for May, there's it would be a rather enormous agenda for us at that time. So we are looking at an additional meeting, as we highlighted earlier. So we'll get dates for that agreed and issued as soon as possible. Apart from that, is everybody content with the work plan?
Yes.
Okay, then we're moving into the private part of the business, having agreed that earlier. Can I suggest that we take a short comfort break, which allows us to ensure that only those who need to be in that private meeting are on the call